Welcome to the Healing Grove podcast. I'm Dr. Kristen Ryman, an integrative holistic family physician, author of Life After Lyme, and host in this virtual space of learning, healing, and growing. I believe humans are like trees, and our physical limb is only one of many. Health on all limbs of the tree, emotional, conceptual, social, spiritual, is absolutely required for the whole tree that is you to be vibrantly well. I created the Healing Grove podcast as a place to showcase some of the world's best integrative and holistic medicine, to expose you to transformative tools and mindset shifts for all limbs of your tree. I hope you enjoy our conversation in the Healing Grove today as much as I enjoyed having it. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Healing Grove podcast. I am here today with Brian Hoyer, who I've been waiting to talk to for a couple months, ever since I started my deep dive into EMFs and really started learning about this stuff. He's been one of the people I've been following. He is one of the world's top EMF mitigation specialists and a functional nutrition therapy practitioner who began his own dive into health when he became a father, wanting to provide the most optimal, growing, and healing environment for his family, which I can so relate to. And this led him ultimately to train with Dr. Klinghardt in the Klinghardt Academy, who's also one of my mentors, and eventually to become a certified geobiologist. He founded Shielded Healing, which is one of his companies, in 2017, with the goal of helping modern humanity recreate the electromagnetic environments that most closely resemble and mimic our historic human habitats. And his work has helped connect the EMF mitigation world with the health and wellness industry, which is sort of how I found him. So let's get started, Brian. I'd love to hear your story. I mean, did you always know from a young age that you were going to be like the guy who went into people's homes and helped them mitigate their EMFs? Like, was that your dream?
No, I actually started off in like the nonprofit world, like working with teenagers, and was in my I grew up as a pastor's kid, so I grew up in the like church ministry and stuff like that, and I was doing kind of nonprofit ministry type of work, and then I realized how unhealthy people were in that space, and got like the whole denomination I was in to go on organic coffee, fair trade, all this stuff in kind of a sneaky way because I was talking about it in terms of like slave labor and things like that, which is a really important issue. But the church changed because of that, not necessarily because it was healthier. And that like spiraled me into as I got when I got married and then got you know had started having children, a lot of the issues come up being a new parent about like what do I do with this new creature that we've created and is just in this big world, and there are all these people from different places, doctors and family relatives, and everybody's telling you exactly what you need to do and what to inject in your child and what to feed them and all of this crap, and then it kind of hits you as a father and as a parent, as parents, that like, oh my gosh, like this is really important. We are actually in charge of these decisions for this helpless little child, and they have really no say in the matter because they can't even talk. So that was like the time when it hit me that like that weight on my shoulders started to come down, and like, you have to take this on, you have to start learning about this. And that spurred me on to learn a lot more about health and wellness. A lot of that was through Dr. Mercola and his website back in the mid 2000s when I was on there and learning a lot about that. But eventually it brought me to the Nutritional Therapy Association, which is a certification program for functional nutritional therapists out in Olympia, Washington. And I took that training. It was like a year-long training, and I got to learn all these palpations and reflex points and how the body works. And then through that, I met somebody who used to work with Dr. Klinghardt, and then I started going to his lectures and doing that as continuing education. And eventually, I heard his talk on EMF and how impactful it is to people and to his patients in his practice, and how detrimental it is, and how nobody in his practice can be cured unless they start to implement these EMF solutions into their life. And it made a lot of sense for me because I was in the, I had a practice, I was in California at the time with my nutrition practice, and I had a practice of about 50 people on a regular basis that I was seeing. And they're coming into my office. I was doing the autonomic response testing and palpating them and doing the reflex points and building protocols for them and trying to get people to understand that, hey, our bodies aren't meant to eat all this modern junk that we're eating. Weston A. Price called them the foods of convenience. Anything that's like packaged up and refined and like, it's just alien food that we're eating basically. So I have to, I'm trying to get people to understand that, hey, we need to eat a more ancestral diet, like nutrient dense whole foods and more like what your ancestors ate, because that's what your bodies for thousands of years have been used to eating and metabolizing and using for energy and nourishment. And then it hit me after the lecture with Klinghardt that like, oh my gosh, EMF is like technologies of convenience. And we need to like not only put like ancestral foods and whole foods into our body, but we need to put our bodies into more ancestral environments that are like the environments that our ancestors were in. Because our bodies are all of this environment is so hectic around us, and it's infiltrating us, and it's causing our body to react in ways that it shouldn't be reacting, in the same way that these modern foods have toxins in them that are creating reactions inside of our body. And so everything just kind of flowed from there to make sense for me. And then I started talking about it and helping people. And that's how Shielded Healing got started. Was I was, in my practitioner groups on Facebook and other social media places, and just answering questions to people. And I was implementing this in my own practice, a lot of these solutions that Dr. Klinghardt taught about, shielding the bedroom space, getting away from the smart meter, shielding the smart meter, doing the dirty electricity filters. And then slowly I was learning more about that. And I took a training from a environmental medicine clinic that had some workshops this place was from Austria. And they taught me how to test for geopathic stress, which was another stressor that Dr. Klinghardt talks about. And I just kind of put everything together and then realized that artificial light is a huge deal as well. And that's a type of EMF. It's on the electromagnetic spectrum as well. And we have, this influx of fluorescent bulbs and LED bulbs, and none of it's natural. It's missing a lot of the natural wavelengths that we normally get from the sun. So ancestral light was even being attacked in our modern world, not just the electromagnetic, electricity and magnetic, environment, but also visible spectrums of electromagnetic waves are being affected in a way that our bodies are being told, like it's the middle of the day when we have a light on at night. It's like, it's telling our bodies that it's that the sun is out and it's noon, when actually it's like 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. So all of these things are creating what are called circadian mismatches, and telling our bodies, communicating different things that our bodies are just confused by because of the modern technology and everything. So that was really kind of how I came from the journey of being in like a service industry all the way around to like natural health and wellness. And then it spiraled into like, hey, now I'm learning more about this, and I'm putting the pieces together and happening to meet the right people and make the right connections. So from there, it kind of like I started to become well known as an expert in the electromagnetic radiation world and industry. And I met people like Dr. Mercola. I continued getting to know Dr. Klinghardt, and then gained his respect in that way, and have helped many of his patients and a lot of the practitioners. And so like it just kind of spiraled into this thing where now I'm able to actually create solutions for people and help people on a more massive scale with a team that I've trained. And so that's where I'm at today. And there's lots of new exciting things that are going on, and I'm really excited to bring your audience up to speed on all of this stuff.
So cool. I love that. It sounds like you really pretty quickly tapped into something that felt like your purpose. It felt like this was the thing that you needed to take a dive into. I think, one of the things about Klinghardt and his, those of us who learn from him, he's so wide ranging. He knows about everything there is to know in the health and wellness space, especially in the kind of mystery illness wellness space, and it can sometimes be overwhelming. But I love how you really just sort of latched onto this thing, and you were like, this is where people, this is the missing piece for me and others, and really delved into it, because it makes it, I think as a teacher, it makes it easier for your message to come across and have an impact.
Yeah, and that's what I found is like, I was doing that in my other nonprofit work. I was able to communicate to people about like effectively about like my different viewpoints on things and like all the different viewpoints and bring them together. It's kind of like part of my personality profile, like Myers-Briggs. I'm a ENTP, and so like getting the big picture like is really easy for me, and then also communicating that to others, in a way that makes sense to them. And that's the thing, is that I think for years we've been stuck in this idea that non-ionizing electromagnetic radiation is not harmful. But nobody's ever thought of, okay, is it, like, there's that, you can debate about that, but you can also debate about a whole different topic, like, well, is it natural though? And is it causing any type of reaction? And I think the physicists have always focused on, oh, it doesn't have enough power to move your atoms or to break the structure of these atoms or these bonds in the body. But that's not really the point. The point to me is, does it cause any unnatural dysfunction or effect on the body that deviates from the normal environment, the ancestral environment? And the most obvious thing when you're talking to somebody who has that position is, well, listen, light, like visible light, is a non-ionizing type of electromagnetic radiation, and it has a profound impact on your physiology and like your sleep. Have you ever tried to sleep with the light on? Yeah, it's very hard to sleep with a light on. It's very hard to sleep in the middle of the day on like you do at nighttime when the sun's out. And so like and from studies that it impacts your melatonin profoundly if you have exposure to light, especially blue light at night. It's going to stop your melatonin production. And so that's a non-ionizing type of radiation that has a profound impact on the body and a detrimental impact when you're exposed at the wrong time. So the fact that people can say that, oh, non-ionizing radiation is not damaging. No, it can be damaging, and it is. And light is like is kind of like the gateway aha moment for a lot of people. They think about that, and it's like, okay, yeah, I guess it does have a physiological impact. And then from there you can move to, okay, well, how does electricity impact the body? And like, how do you restart a heart? You pump voltage into the heart, because the heart's a muscle and it has all these fibers and everything in it. It contracts. When it contracts, it's using calcium. When it relaxes, it's using magnesium up. And so we're exposed to this electricity, like 60 hertz electricity is what's in our walls. That's what all of our devices plug into in our walls in America. And in other countries, it's 50 hertz. But that hertz pulsation is pulsing, like 60 hertz is 120 pulsations back and forth per second. And so your cells are really literally like jostling at that rate with these pulsations. And it's using up stores of magnesium and calcium and other minerals all the time. And if you're saying that, when you explain that to people and talk about like you're sleeping in a bedroom where you're getting like 5 to 10 volts on your body, 5,000 to 10,000 millivolts is how we test it, and you're constantly jostling all of those cells and using up your magnesium, no wonder you can't get restful sleep, because you're constantly being stimulated, just like an electrode that's causing involuntary muscle contractions. When you pump voltage into that, it causes your muscles to contract. So on a low level, you're also getting all of this stimulation. It's raising cortisol. It's lowering your ability to produce melatonin all night while you're sleeping. And we know through people like Dr. Klinghardt that melatonin is like the body's #1 potent antioxidant. And if you're not able to produce that in the amounts needed, to combat the oxidative stress, especially in the brain at night when your brain is supposed to detox, then you're going to have a lot more of that beta amyloid plaque and the oxidative stressors in the brain that are not able to be neutralized because you don't have adequate melatonin levels. And so that was one thing, like after I started implementing these solutions into my clients' lives, their sleep massively improved. And a lot of the protocols that I was doing in gut healing and digestion and hormones, they just kind of started aligning, and I didn't have to use as much supplementation because their environment was the correct environment, and it's their healing environment. Sleeping time is the time when your body is using all the resources that you take during the day, food, supplements, sunshine, whatever. Your body's like intaking all of these things during the day, but at night your body's supposed to kind of be in this restore mode, using all of those resources and energy to repair. And there's not supposed to be any outside influence that's causing the distraction away from that maintenance period. And that's exactly what EMF is doing, is it's causing your body energetic distractions and causing that sympathetic nervous system to activate so that the shields are up and it's not able to activate the parasympathetic nervous system, which is kind of like the healing activated mode. And once once all the stressors are blocked, then your body is actually able to heal. And it's like amazing results that I saw over the years.
Yeah, amazing, right? Like you take the obstacles out of the way and the body just is a self-healing oven, a self-healing organism. It's pretty miraculous. So I wonder if you could tell us a little bit more about, I mean, I'm thinking about people listening to this and I can imagine there are people going, well, okay, well, I might be vibrating all night at 120, but I feel fine in the morning, or I don't have, terrible illnesses or rashes or headaches or anything. I'm not affected by this. And we know there's a whole spectrum of how people might be affected by this. I wonder if you could talk about kind of the extreme end of the spectrum, the very electrosensitive, the what is it, electrosensitivity,
Yeah,
hyper,
electro hypersensitivity is the term that's been used, but there's a new term called EMR syndrome that a lot of people are now using, electromagnetic radiation syndrome. And but whatever the case is, it's people who are highly sensitive to it and they get acute symptoms from exposures.
So how does that present? I have a couple of people in my practice with that, but not many. And I suspect you have a lot more. Certainly people who have this are going to look for someone like you to help them remediate their home environment so they can just, live. So tell us what that looks like and what are the common things you see with that?
Yeah, so we get, I'd say as far as our customer base, people who reach out to us, we probably 30 to 40% are people who are what we would call hypersensitive or have this EMR syndrome. Um, and the rest of them are people that are just really interested in health and wellness, or they want to optimize, biohackers, those types of people. But for people who are sensitive, a lot of the symptoms that they get are similar to people who are sensitive to mold, chemicals, and they might have chronic Lyme disease. They're just they're sensitive to a lot of different things. And then also there's people who have had really traumatic events happen to them in their life, like a lot of loss and grief, and people who are experienced that and have ill health and brain fog. All of those are commonalities that we've seen among people who start to become sensitive or notice that they have a sensitivity to different electromagnetic exposures, whether it's a Wi-Fi router, their cell phone, the microwave, being near their computer, typing on a keyboard, or just sleeping in a bed near the electricity in the walls. And people have varying symptoms. A lot of people, like, the brain symptoms usually are coming more from, like, the mental clarity symptoms are usually coming more from wireless radiation. And like headaches and things like that can also come from wireless radiation, but can also be related to source of a magnetic field from a power line or a motor in a fridge running on the other side of a wall, or a bank of smart meters that produce wireless and have a large magnetic field that can come out from them, like where the breaker boxes are. And power lines also have huge magnetic fields if they're the really large ones, the transmission lines. So there's just a gamut of symptoms, and the reason there's so many different symptoms is because these frequencies actually attack the voltage gated calcium ion channels. Actually, all the ion channels are voltage gated, whether it's potassium or calcium or the sodium channels. But all of them are voltage gated, and they know from the research, they've done Dr. Martin Pall did a meta-analysis of the research and showed that these VGCCs, these voltage gates, are actually activated by exposure to wireless, to the electric fields, and to the magnetic fields. So even people who don't feel the symptoms acutely, they're still affected by these things. And what that does in those voltage gates is it causes them to open, and calcium floods into the cell, and it creates a potent free radical called peroxynitrite. And this is all proven. This is exactly what happens. And when that free radical, or when calcium enters the cell and there's nitric oxide present in the cell, that molecule, that free radical, peroxynitrite, is created. And it causes all sorts of oxidative stress to the cell, and then by default to the tissues, and then eventually to the organs. And if that's not able to be stopped, if you don't stop the stressor, or you don't have an antioxidant on board to mitigate that oxidative stress, then you're going to have chronic symptoms that develop over time. So, so even if you're not experiencing something right now, you still are being affected by it. The people who are the most affected are the people who have more oxidative stress already. And so you can get oxidative stress from all the things that I mentioned previously, from mold exposure, from chemical exposure. You can get it from emotional traumatic events in your life. And Lyme disease can cause lots of oxidative stress as well, and other chronic illnesses. So basically, wherever the weakest link is, that's where a lot of times the exposure to certain EMF frequencies can kind of push a person over the edge to where they start feeling symptoms from the oxidative stress that's created from the exposure to EMF. So really, it's kind of like you have a stress bucket, and it's like, how much can you tolerate of the toxic air you're breathing, of the chemicals that you're exposed to, of the emotional trauma and traumas, past traumas that are in your life. How much of this stress can your body take before it starts getting symptoms? And so it's not a game of whether, like, I don't feel anything or not. Like, your body's still being affected by it, but maybe you don't have as much stress in these other areas. So it's still important to pay attention, because if you can mitigate the EMF stress, maybe when you have a traumatic event happen in your life unexpectedly, so you lose somebody in a car accident or a fire or whatever. A lot of people recently with these California fires have lost their homes. That's a hugely traumatic event for a lot of people. They've lost a lot of mementos, keepsakes, things that have been important to them that they've had their whole lives. And a lot of these people, as a result of that, are going to get physically ill, because some of them won't deal with the traumatic event. They're going to bury it, and it's going to cause their body to freak out, essentially. So it's important, like, if we can take care of our bodies from this perspective of taking care of blocking these frequencies that are actually stressing us, then we can lower the amount of stress that's in that bucket, so that if something does happen that we can't control, our bodies are going to be able to more likely handle it in a more healthy way.
Yeah, I love the bucket metaphor. It's so useful, and I think it does help people to understand that even if they're not feeling a symptom, well, great, your bucket's not overflowing in this moment, but doesn't mean you're not filling it for later overflow.
Right.
Yeah. So I wonder if you could walk us through the kind of main types of electromagnetic frequencies that people need to be aware of, and kind of a couple places that they're commonly found or where they come from.
Yeah, so typically the work we do is we will go into someone's home and test the common sources found in the home. We also work with doctors' clinics and like in places where they do therapies and things like that. Because in clinics and you know you do therapies, and most of the therapies that you use or that are used by people, especially for those who are chronically ill, require the body to be in a parasympathetic state, which means a relaxed state, the opposite of fight or flight. You have to be relaxed and in order for your body to heal, because the body prioritizes healing when it's not feeling an outside threat from the outside world. And so that's the same thing with therapeutic interventions that you do at your doctor's office. And that's why shielding EMF there is very important. But it's also important to do it at home. So we have this priority system that we teach people that, it's the 3Ds. And this is off of we put this in an EMF course that I teach with one of my business partners, Nick Pinot. They call him the EMF guy. But the course is called the Electropollution Fix. And the 3Ds are distance, downtime, and duration. So, like, those are the three things that are most important when it comes to EMF exposures. So, the distance you are away from the EMF source, the duration of time that you're around that EMF source, and then downtime is are you sleeping in this area? That's like the biggest downtime. That's where you eat, where you sleep, or where you detox. Those are the downtimes. So where you're eating, it's really important so that like if you're exposed to some stressor while you're eating, you're not going to be able to digest your food, and you're going to more likely have problems with leaky gut if you're eating in a stressed out environment, because your food's not going to be able to digest as well. And when you have undigested food going onto the small intestine and like it disrupts the villi, and that is what can cause leaky gut. And when you have leaky gut and that undigested food gets in there, the immune system treats it as a foreign invader and then marks it as an allergen. And that's how people become so sensitive to multiple types of food. So that's how EMF is actually connected to a lot of food allergies. And that's what I found out in my practice, was that people are constantly exposed to this. It's keeping them in this leaky gut state. And that's why I'd have to keep them continually on things like Reparavite and zinc L-carnosine and licorice root and cabbage leaf juice and like things like that to help continually heal their gut, because their body's constantly being stressed by these environmental sources that are causing them to be in a more sympathetic state and causing leaky gut. So so as you know, so when we go into someone's house, we're concerned about where they eat. We're concerned mostly, and we focus mostly on where you sleep, because that's where your body is staying in the same location for 8 hours every single night. And we're testing for the wireless radiation that's coming from inside the home, from your Wi-Fi router, your smart meter that's on the side of your house that's pulsing frequencies to let the electric company know how much power you're using. And it's also communicating with your neighbor's smart meter and goes back and forth from that neighbor to the other neighbor. And there's these constant pulses, like a few times, from either like a few times every minute to like a dozen times every minute, that you're getting pulses of this 900 megahertz frequency, which in the literature over in Europe, there's several studies that show that it's very common for research scientists to use the 900 to 915 megahertz frequency to actually cause a leaky blood-brain barrier in rats when they're testing drugs on the brain of rats. So they actually use that frequency to cause leaky brain so that they can test the drug's ability and to test how that drug impacts the brain. And the
Okay,
only thing
so
they use to cause leaky blood-brain barrier is that same frequency that we use on our smart meter communications.
okay, pause right there. Who made that decision?
I
Why
have
was
no
that
idea.
the frequency? That is so ridiculous to me. Klinghardt, there was a great YouTube video I showed for many years. I'm not sure if it's still up, where Klinghardt was talking about the dangers of smart meters. And at that point, his best solution for smart meters was a baseball bat. Are there better solutions for smart meters? Because a lot of people can't control that these meters are getting put on their house. Their township or their city says, no, you have no choice. Like, what's your answer for people who are struggling with the fact that this thing has been stuck to our houses, which now is opening our blood-brain barrier?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people that are just opting out of it, and then sometimes the local utility has an opt-out program where they basically have you pay a certain amount each month to have them not install a smart meter on your house. That's one option. Um, I don't like the extortion part of that. And so like there's other solutions too where like the smart meter, there's multiple problems with it. It's that number one, the RF pulse, which is the thing that causes a leaky blood-brain barrier. That's an issue. Now, you can change your smart meter, but you can't really change your neighbor's. And sometimes the neighbor's smart meter is closer to your bedroom than your own. So the solution I've told people is like there's lots of YouTube videos on how to create your own smart meter shield, like DIY solutions. That's great. I'm working on like a cover right now that is easy to install that basically you can put on your smart meter just like this, and it shields that frequency from being emitted. It reduces it by, I mean, 99.9%.
But
So
what
it's much
about the
weaker.
backside? Isn't the backside where it's attached to your wall kind of also a big deal? How do you, and that's what's coming into your home, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the backside, like when you have the meter, let's see, do I have anything I can use here? Not really. But like if my hand is the meter and it's against this, there's a big metal plate on this side, and there's also a metal plate in the front. And then all the electronic components are inside behind this meter that's kind of sticking out. It's this shape.
Hmm.
So when you put it over that, this completes the shield, goes right up against that metal, and then there's a box here that's all metal that's attached to the building. And so it's all basically already blocked from the metal on this side and prevents that from going into the house. Now the caveat to that is that um, even without a shield on, those frequencies are blasting out, and there's been some studies that show that like if my arm is the electrical lines going up to the smart meter, there's studies that show that the RF antenna is like up here, it's blasting a really strong signal, and some of that's resonating onto the wires in the house. And there are some people who are really sensitive that say they can feel that even after their smart meter is shielded from the primary frequencies. They feel a pulsing that feels like the smart meter coming from the wires. And so one of the designs that I'm developing with this is that there's going to be a RF absorbing material in the smart meter cover, like an insert that should help dampen that. And I'll need to get that tested, but um, only really sensitive people can feel that. So like for them, really the only option is to change out their smart meter. But for the average person, like if you block with a shield and then get a filter to filter the dirty electricity, that's another issue that smart meters create, is it, creates this, there's like a switch mode power supply, technical electrical term that's on that. But that power supply causes all these thousands of different frequencies to ride on the electrical system, separate from the wireless antenna that's resonating onto the wires. So it creates these thousands of frequencies that are basically like electromagnetic interference frequencies, distortion, they call it harmonic distortion, that goes on the electrical lines. Instead of it being like a clean signal, 60 hertz sine wave, it creates all of these crazy like frequencies, higher frequencies that are riding on the electrical system. Kind of like when you're tuning a radio station and it's crisp and clear when it comes in. That's like a 60 hertz, it's clean, you're getting the signal that you want, but then you start to tune it a little away from the frequency and you hear all this noise. Like that's like kind of like what your electrical is like when it's dirty. It creates all of this noise, these other frequencies, and even though all of your electricity is working, it's actually more damaging and more chaotic to the body to perceive all the thousands of frequencies plus the normal 60 hertz electrical frequency. And there's the studies, Dr. Magda Havis has a lot of studies in the research about um, how that dirty electricity, those higher frequencies that are riding on your electrical system, they actually act a lot like blood sugar spikes, like when you eat a donut or candy or something. So people with diabetes, especially, or blood sugar regulation issues, should definitely filter their dirty electricity, filter the electricity in their house to prevent the dirty electricity from impacting their blood sugar. But it's very well established that it has a huge impact on blood sugar regulation.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive, her work. She was one of the first people who kind of clued me into the issue of dirty electricity. So we've talked a little about dirty electricity. You mentioned radio frequency RF, which is Wi-Fi. Can you give us kind of like the big picture summaries of each of those types of electricity or of magnetic fields and energetic fields so that we can kind of start to think about them separately?
Yeah, so, and it is really important to think about them separately. So I'm glad you kind of worded it that way because a lot of people group EMF into just one thing and like, okay, what do I do for this problem? And the issue with that type of thinking is that, you know, uh, each type of EMF is a different frequency. And so because it's a different frequency, it has varying solutions for each one. Just like in order to block light, you can't just put a metal screen up. Like the light goes right through here. I can see right through this, and I can see my lamp through this. So even though this will block wireless frequencies in a really, effective way, like I could put my phone in here and close it up, and it'll drop the signal because it won't be able to get the signal out because of the type of frequency. But light photons are much smaller than radio frequency waves. So radio frequency waves, they can't propagate through this, but the photons slip right through. That's why you can put a metal screen up and light will go right through. And so like, but if I have this, if this is all black and it's a blackout curtain or something, and I put a flashlight in here and shine it right in my face, it doesn't go through. It effectively blocks that because all of the black color actually absorbs those photons and doesn't reflect them, and that definitely doesn't propagate through on the other side. So that's why like sometimes things that will block a wireless signal, like anything metal has can shield a wireless signal if it's especially if it's fully enclosed. That's what a Faraday cage is called. Um, but electric fields can propagate through anything that's conductive. And so we use grounding to help shield against the electricity portion of it. That's the 60 hertz that's running through your house. So you have wireless radiation, that's from Wi-Fi, cell phone towers, radars. If you live near an airport, there's a lot of radars that will be kind of blipping a big and turning around like this and basically blasting the whole zone all the way around the airport. Um, and then microwaves send out a big wireless signal, 2.4 gigahertz, that actually heats up the water in your food. And and then so there's wireless radiation. There's electricity. That's the voltage that you can detect from the electricity in your walls. Anything that you plug into an outlet has electricity in it. And then magnetic fields, that can come from any magnet that's spinning, or it can come from imbalanced current on wires, or a lot of current on wires. So like a lot of current, an example of that would be like the big power lines or distribution centers. Uh, you'll go under there with a meter, a Gauss meter is what you use to measure that, and you'll get a large magnetic field. You go next to your breaker box where there's a lot of current, you're going to get a magnetic field 3 to 4 feet out from that. That's higher than what it should be for optimal health and sleep, especially. Um, And then if there's wiring errors in your house, that can also cause a magnetic field because current and voltage goes from your breaker panel out to, like, say, a light, and then it goes back the same pathway. That's how it is when it's correctly wired. But sometimes when there's a wire that stops at, like, at a box, electricians call it a junction box, and you have like a light switch that has multiple switches on it, like 3 or 4 light switches on it. A bunch of wires converge there, sometimes from different circuits. And if one of those is misconnected, then it won't go back the same path to the breaker box. It might go back a different path. And at that point, it's not canceling out the current anymore. And so, like, you could have, like, you know, basically it starts to deviate going this way. And because it's not canceled out, because those wires aren't together anymore for that same circuit, that's what causes the magnetic field. It's no longer canceling out. And those are actually code violations when that happens. And so we're like, a big part of what we do is when we're testing someone's home, we can test with our meter that measures magnetic fields and tell if there's wiring errors. And then we work with the person's electrician to fix those wiring errors so that we can completely eliminate those magnetic fields. And there's some more nuance to that. There's other kinds of wiring errors where we work with electricians on that kind of thing, but most of them are actually code violations. And so if you're even renting from a landlord, you can sometimes work with the landlord to fix that, and it's going to help your health to have that fixed as well. So
And they pretty
magnetic
much
fields
have
are,
to because it was like, and they'll have to, right? Because it was a code violation. So it's not like mold where they could be like, meh, I don't smell it, I'm not going to change it. But like a code violation is a code violation.
yeah, exactly. You have a little more clout when if you have an electrician come in and say, oh, there's a code violation here. And usually
Yeah.
it's not that much to fix it. Sometimes it's as easy as the electrician coming in, opening up that box with the gang of light switches, and then just taking an extra wire nut and then switching a wire over and screwing that in, and then he's done. It literally takes like 1 minute to fix it in a lot of circumstances. Finding it is the hard part, which is where you really need to hire someone like me or my team or a building biologist that knows how to handle wiring errors. And and that's the hard part because electricians won't really know how to detect it, but if they see it, they know it's a code violation. And we have ways that we teach them to use their tools as well to detect and see if there's any wiring errors in the house using their own equipment, which a lot of times, a lot of what we do is educate electricians on how to kind of work outside the box of what they normally do to discover these things. And they appreciate it. They like learning new things about this, especially, for one day, they get to not just be a safety guy and an electrician guy, they get to be a health practitioner that day that they're working with us.
That's awesome. So we have radio frequency, which is the Wi-Fi. We have electric fields. We have magnetic fields you've touched on. Um, we have dirty electricity. What's missing?
Geopathic stress is another one. So
Tell us
that's
about that.
yeah, so that's radiation that comes up from the earth that's natural. Um, and it's natural, but also it's kind of infected by the way that we have our electrical system because uh, all of the electricity outside of our homes, like on the power lines, like every so often those power lines they actually ground the neutral wires that are going back to the electrical substation. So essentially what that means in America, they don't do this in Europe, but in America, we're using the ground as a secondary return path back to the electrical company. So geopathic stress and how that's related, I'll get to that in a second. But geopathic stress is, also known as telluric currents, Telluric, in the literature. That's what it's called. And that's one of the things that's kind of tricky to uh, to understand is like you look for geopathic stress and you search that term, you're going to get lots of information on that. but a lot of sources will be like, oh, it's this woo-woo thing. A lot of us in the natural health space are used to that and can write that part off. But if you look in the actual scientific literature for that term telluric currents, it's a real thing where there is conductivity in the soil, and there's more in some places than others, and it can cause these currents to come up to the surface. Now, because the Earth's crust does have conductivity in it, you know, there's more energy in some places than others, and it's always been that way. But now that we have electrical systems that are going into the ground and using this neutral return path back to the power station, the conductivity in the earth is becoming more noxious, more stressful in places that are more conductive. And so those places can actually receive more dirty electricity and elevate up and go along the same current pathways. So it can go right along the telluric current pathways. So geopathic stress in general is any type of radiation or energy that comes from the earth itself. And so there's different grid lines that are created from the earth's magnetic field in combination with how it interacts with the sun's solar radiation. And then there's also like fault lines and cracks in the earth's crust that cause different minerals to like press up against each other under extreme pressure. And that can create like a battery-like effect that creates a current that shoots straight up. And so all of these things are subtle energies that can be detected with really expensive and large equipment. Geomagnometers are what they're called. But they're impractical to carry with you to people's homes. So over time, they've developed like a system of using these dowsing rods, these copper rods that can, and a lot of plumbers use them, electricians use them to find underground electrical lines and pipes. And people use them all over the world to test to see if there's oil. And they'll pay hundreds of thousands of dollars to a good dowser if they're to tell them where to drill for oil. But you can also do it, you'll have people who dig wells that use them for detecting water underneath the Earth's surface. All of these areas that have oil, that have water, that, where there's metal or conductive materials under the earth, those rods can actually indicate through a response in your body. As your body goes over that current, there's a polarity shift that happens, and the rods help to indicate that. So it changes from positive to negative, and as you're passing through that field, the rods will go together or they'll go apart because of the polarity change from positive to negative as the energy is going through your body. Since your body's conductive, we can actually detect this, and it takes some training to like go through it. But once you do it, it's really actually scientific that it happens. You have to learn how to keep them steady so you're not influencing them. But once you do that and you learn how to walk and keep them steady, you'll see that they actually go together or go apart on their own. And so that's how we're able to like map out like hot spots inside a person's home and tell them like, okay, here's a safer place to put the bed. And then there's other solutions that you can have where you can actually put like these figure-8 copper rings that are placed in a certain size and diameter together, and that can create, like, as that energy comes up, the copper rings collect that energy and resonate out the same frequency and actually can deflect the geopathic stress from underneath, and it can go around. So that's how we can get it to where like, and you can keep your bed in the same spot, but we're creating, by putting these rings underneath your bed, we're deflecting that energy away so that you have a safer place to sleep from a geopathic stress standpoint.
Wow. Thank you for that explanation, because the dowsing rods have never made sense to me until just now. And it does feel really woo. Like you see people walking around your property and they're moving these little rods and you're not sure, well, are they just moving them or like what's happening? But what you're saying is there's basically, they're like two magnets coming together. Like they're not able to be together anymore in the midst of these fields that they encounter.
Yeah, yeah, the literal polarity shifts and then they either become attracted or repelled like that.
So wild, so wild. Okay, so thank you for walking us through all that. What are some of the mistakes people make when they're trying to remediate their EMF situation in their home on their own? And
Good
I'm
question.
asking for a friend, maybe that person's me, but I'm trying to figure out how to do this safely in my own home, not being a building biologist, just picking the brain of people like you and reading a lot, watching a lot of videos. What are some of the things we should avoid doing?
Well, um, basically have a good talk with your electricians. And I would like if you just want to take the easiest route, get this really old book by a guy named Carl Riley, Karl Riley, Riley. I think it's EY, but it's called Tracing EMFs and Building Wiring. And just say, hey, this is a book that kind of is very nitpicky about wiring and doing it to a T and the main issues that can cause health issues for people. It's all, according to the National Electric Code. It's not the most updated code, but the codes that he refers to are things that are still the same as today. But if you could just read through this book and make sure that, we're addressing all the most common issues that cause problems, I'd be very appreciative of that. And that book I think is like $35 or something, so it's a great investment to just get that, hand it to your electrician, explain it to him, have him look through it. And the great thing about that is that if you give your electrician that, instead of he doesn't consider himself on the clock when he reads the book. So he'll take it and he'll be interested in it. He'll read it at home, not charge you for it, and then come with like this whole new set of knowledge and understanding of this when he's doing the work for you. And he doesn't think of it as being on the clock. So there that education, that extra, step there, that's gonna prevent a lot of headaches, potential headaches, for you if you just hand that book over to your electrician. That's number one. Um, Number two is like if you're building, like I offer a lot of I'm working on about maybe 50 different home builds right now. And so we go through the whole floor plan and then we're looking at, okay, where are the appliances? Are they near a bedroom? We want it to be 3 to 4 feet away from a seating area or a sleeping area that's being used. It's better if some of these appliances like ovens and refrigerators and dishwashers and washers and dryers uh, are backed up to a storage area or a hallway rather than a bedroom or the dining room wall or like a seating area. And so you're kind of thinking about things in terms of like getting yourself some distance away from those appliances that can be running with a motor and causing a magnetic field to come out anywhere from 4 to 6 feet. So that's an issue. And then also like going back to wiring your Ethernet. That's it's a really simple thing to do, and there's low voltage companies. That's what you'd want to the term you'd want to use when talking to your electrician. Like, hey, do we have a low voltage company we can work with to wire Ethernet ports in the house so that I can have a solid, fast, wired Ethernet connections in every room? Uh, that's super important. And then, like there's other things too, like the lighting. You want healthy lighting. We made like a healthy lighting guide, like a human optimized lighting guide that will include for everybody who listens to this. Um, but light can flicker. Uh, it can have the wrong spectrum of light. It's either with LEDs, you're missing the red and infrared portion of light that sunlight has, and with incandescent and halogen, you're missing the blue part that the sun has, which a lot of people don't talk about that part. But the sun has a lot of blue light. You look up at the sky on a sunny day, what color is it? It's blue. So, and you need that blue light in order to produce serotonin during the day. And serotonin actually elevates your mood and makes you feel happier and motivated. Uh, but what is that serotonin? That serotonin, like the more light you get, the more serotonin you're producing during the day. But then when the sun sets and the light goes away, all of that serotonin stores are a precursor to melatonin creation. And so that serotonin will turn to melatonin once it gets dark. And darkness is actually the signal. So if you're around light all day, and this is why people that are camping, especially in environments where it's really sunny, like Arizona or, tropical place, like you're outside all day during the sun getting lots of sunlight, and then once it gets dark, you're like, oh man, I'm so tired. I want to go to bed. And then you sleep so good because you're just outside all day getting all of this light, bright light, and then it gets dark, and that darkness is the signal for your body. Like all of that serotonin that's been being built up is just like poof, now it's melatonin. And that's why you're able to sleep so good in those situations. And a lot of us are nodding our heads like you are, saying like, yeah, I can relate to that because it's true. And but if you're at home, or like say you spend all day outside on a boat, like on a lake, and you build up all this serotonin, but then you get home and you have all the lights on, like you're not gonna feel tired until those lights turn off. And then when they are off, you're gonna be so tired that, my gosh, you're gonna crash and feel groggy. And like if you stayed up too late, like it's gonna hit you like a ton of bricks like later that night if you keep going because you leave the lights on. So, a lot of us can relate to that too, and think of that one instance where that happened, or a few times where that did happen. Like, wow, I don't know why I'm so tired. Well, that's why. You have to think about your light environment just like we do our natural environment. And so that's another type of EMF. I don't think I listed that the last time. I forgot to mention that, but light is the other type of EMF besides geopathic stress.
Interesting. And it's helpful too to hear it phrased that way, because I think these things can get so confusing, but to imagine that it's all actually exist on a spectrum of energy frequencies that are different in frequency, right? Which is what makes them different in their impact and effects, and that there are some very healing frequencies on there. And there's also some, very harmful and biologically kind of, destructive frequencies. And the more we can build the healing frequencies into our lives, the better, while
Yeah.
reducing the other stuff, right?
hmm Yeah, it's not about, EMF is bad or good. It's about like natural EMF is what our bodies actually use for energy. I mean, light, infrared light, it's well known that it causes that infrared light stimulates mitochondrial ATP production through a molecule called cytochrome C oxidase. So as soon as infrared light hits the cell, and your body starts to produce energy. And they estimate, this was from an interview with Dr. Mercola and Dr. Alexander Wunsch. Uh, he, Dr. Alexander Wunsch, he's a light photobiologist and a researcher. And he, through his studies and things that he's been involved in, he stated that 2/3 of your body's ATP comes from light, and only 1/3 comes from food. And so
Wow, wait a second. Really? Say that again. Two
two
thirds of the energy you make comes from light. We're like plants?
Yeah, your body literally, your cells literally take that light and turn it into energy. And only 1/3 of the energy that the mitochondria makes is as a result of food, or food's responsible for it. And in
Wow.
terms of energy, he's talking about the importance of light compared to the importance of food as far as energy production goes. You still need food to produce energy, for sure. But if you're not getting enough light, you're not optimizing that energy cycle as much. The more light, you're gonna benefit more from getting more light than you would from getting more food, basically.
Wow. Wow. Well, it makes a really good argument then for, going south in the winter, for flying south.
Yeah, and like practically, if you think about it, like it makes sense too from an experiential standpoint. Like you go on vacation to Hawaii, and you're from one of the northern states, like Minnesota, or here I live in northern Idaho, um, and you go on vacation to Hawaii, and like you're out in the sun all the time, and like say you're spending time at the beach, and then you're like, man, I'm not eating nearly as much as I normally do. And what am I craving? I'm craving fruit and a lot more carbs. You tend to eat more carbs in that environment than you do these more than like really heavy meals like proteins and fat, like high fat, high protein meals. It's because you're getting a lot of your energy from light, your sustained long-term energy from light, instead of your sustained long-term energy and metabolism coming from fats and proteins. You still need fats and proteins, but the carbs are what are actually tending to be more appealing to you in that environment. That's why, like, when you go on vacation to these tropical places and you're outside a lot, you tend to eat a lot more fruit, you tend to eat more like simple carbohydrates, and you feel good. And you're like, I'm not even hungry. Like a really heavy steak meal with like lots of butter and mashed potatoes doesn't sound good when you after you've been sitting on the beach all day.
So interesting. Well, you've given us something to think about that we can all relate to, I'm sure. So, you've talked about the consultation services with Shielded Healing. You've talked about the course you have, and we'll put links to those in the show notes for people if they want to follow up. Tell us a little bit about your new venture, the Shielding Shop.
Yeah, so a little over a year and a half ago, I started a new company called the Shielding Shop, and the goal of it, the tagline is technology that respects your biology. And I've already come out with like 4 or 5 different flagship products that were kind of missing in the EMF shielding realm, and and the whole idea of like uh, creating healthy electronics. Um, that's what the goal of the company is to re-engineer basically everything that we have so that we can have healthy versions of it. Just like, you know, we had to reinvent like how we do food once all the chemicals and toxins were introduced to our farms in America and all over the world. Like, we've developed toxic electricity since about the 40s. It was started to, the 1940s, it was starting to be implemented widespread all over without any regard for health. Now we kind of have to have a revolution of healthy electronics because they are stressing our bodies. So um, we sell everything from shielded cables, shielded power cords. I have this awesome therapeutic shielded lamp called the Jovial lamp. That's the packaging for it right back there. And the goal is to really create a place where people can come and replace a bunch of the stuff that they currently have with healthy versions of it. So a lot of it's boring stuff like cables and extension cords and things like that. But there's also like things like this that are more exciting to me. Like this is a mounted power dock that has grounded USB ports on it. So you can charge your phone with a USB-C or USB port, and because it's grounded, none of the chargers currently on the market are grounded. So we've grounded these ports so that when you plug it in and charge your phone, it's not giving you any EMF if your phone's on airplane mode. So there's no electricity that's coming and buzzing onto your body at that 60 hertz because it's all grounded out. Your phone charges with DC anyway. That's direct current. That's the same current and beneficial current that you're getting from the earth when you're barefoot on the grass or the sand, wet sand especially. But we're trying to shield all the frequencies that are negatively affecting the body and allowing our bodies to receive the beneficial frequencies from the technology around us. So everything we have healthy lighting on there. We have shielded office products. I've got a brand new phone charger and laptop charger that's coming out that's grounded, that people will be able to bring with them wherever they go, to have, even in the airport, you can ground without electric fields. So, a lot of these products are things that I've developed because I'm like, man, I need this. And my customers need this. Like, it's actually really impacting them on a continual basis. And as we chip away, like, people are probably exposed to EMFs like 99.9% of the time throughout their day. My goal is to reduce that immediately through getting assessments of their homes and us to guide them through the shielding process of their bedroom, which we use conductive paints to fully shield the bedroom and ground all the walls, the floors, and the ceiling, and create like a haven for them to sleep in where they're free of all the EMF stress. So right away, 8 hours of their day is chunked off. And then we have to chip away continually through the shielding shop at other EMF exposures throughout the day. And my hope is that like we can get that number down to like only the bare minimum of what's needed to be exposed to, you know? Like I think, you know, I want our lives to be as energetically ancestral as possible. And in order to do that, we have to replace or shield a bunch of the stuff that we currently use for convenience purposes with technology. I actually love technology and using it and connecting to people and helping educate people and educate myself. But I want this to be something that's safe for people, and so that we don't suffer more. And the more that we suffer from this stuff, and I think we have control of a lot of this stuff. Like I don't want to stress about the things we don't have control over, but I can see solutions all around me, and that's what I plan to like bring to the world through this new company. And that's what I want, you know, to offer to people is like let's create a really safe environment as much as we can while we're using this technology that everyone's going to be using it forever from now on forever. So let's make it safer for everybody.
I love that mission, and I'm so excited to get this conversation out to my people so they can start to learn how to make their own houses and their own homes and their work environments all that much healthier. Thanks again, Brian. This has been amazing. I really appreciate you. And we'll include in the show notes all the ways that people can reach out to you and work with you if they desire.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Healing Grove podcast. If you liked it, please be sure to like and subscribe. And if you want to deepen your experience further, consider grabbing a copy of the Healing Grove playbook. With journal prompts for this podcast and 41 others, it's the perfect place to record your learnings, keep track of the tools you explore, and reflect on your own experience. Finally, it's important to mention that even though I am a doctor, nothing you hear on this podcast, whether from myself or my guests, constitutes medical advice. Any intervention you try should always be discussed with and supervised by a trusted member of your own healing team. Thanks for listening, and see you next time in the Healing Grove.